Thank you folks for clicking on the video. If you'd like to be informed when new videos go live, please hit that subscribe button and don't forget to hit that bell notification icon. Please feel free to like, comment, and share the video with family and friends, as it really does help the channel grow in the current YouTube algorithm structure.
It is the 31st century, and mankind is once again at war. The battlefields of the future are dominated by huge robotic war machines known as Battlemechs. Piloting these awesome weapons of war are men and women, the elite of the elite, knowing that each battle could be their last. They are mech warriors.
Ooh, doesn't that intro give you chills? Hello everybody and welcome back to Swamp Dog Games. That video that you just watched is the old intro from Mech Warrior 3. If you want to see the full expanded version, I highly suggest that you do look it up, where you see a couple mechs actually engage each other. But that little blurb is, in my opinion, one of the best video game intros of all time. It quickly establishes what the setting is, kind of what the stakes are, and kind of how dark the universe is. And we're going to be doing a review of Battletech, a game of armored combat, which is the same property. So Battletech is the board game, Mech Warrior was the video game, as well as the RPG line. But they're all the same setting, all the same basic plot. The Mech Warrior video games, by the way, great. I have not had a chance to play Mech Warrior 5 yet because there was this issue with Epic Games exclusivity when I'm a Steam player, and so didn't get around to it. And then a year later I had moved on to some other things and forgotten about it until I started doing these reviews. So I'll get to that eventually, but in the meantime we're going to be going the OG, the starter box. So this box is supposedly everything that you need to play the rules. I'll be doing a comparison to my memory of the old WizKid starter box, which I believe was $50. But that was early 2000s. This now, due to inflation, MSRP is now $60. The starter kit that I reviewed last time, depending upon where you purchase it, could be done for either $20 or MSRP $25. We'll see how this compares internally as a starter, what you get, and if it is worth your time, money, and investment. Yeah. I will say, if just on a price comparison, because of course everybody's going to do the price comparison to Warhammer 40K, a starter box from them right now is $150. 3 times this, and it doesn't even include the core rules. You still have to buy the basic rule book or of the starter, and there's a lot of stuff that's not even explained. It's an expensive initial endeavor, and it really isn't that worthwhile, in my opinion. A starter box to see if you want to play the game. These, if you look at a price comparison, depending upon whether you're buying a Inner Sphere or Clan, those are two major factions, think NATO and Warsaw Pact, countries will determine the price. Inner Sphere uses 4 mechs, Clanners uses 5 mechs minimum unit design, so the initial packs will usually be between $20 to $30, depending upon what comes in them. So this one you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plastic miniatures. So when you look at the 30 to 35, like 40 range worth of miniatures that they include in here, it's only $20 extra the rules. So forces are also much smaller in this game, so you don't have to have, like in 40K, where you have vast armies that have to engage. This, you can do unit engagements. Some people do duels, one-on-one. Some people will do lance, which is in universe the minimum force strength, similar to like a US fire team. or any combination thereof. So you can do this game with very little investment. The one downside, though, is if you want to get into the advanced rules, which there are a ton of advanced rules. Well, this I gotta save for myself, so this review will be delayed while I end up redeeming this token. Which then, when does this expire? It doesn't say, but it does say 2022, so theoretically, usually these have like a 1-year expiration limit on them. So when you think about it, $60 to get in here, $40 worth of plastic miniatures, and a $20 coupon. You're looking about actually cost here. that is if, though, you decide that you actually want to continue playing this game after opening up this box. But the initial value proposition actually ain't bad. You'll never see one of these coupons in a Games Workshop product. So get that out of the way. Of course, one of the big draws, of this universe is definitely the fiction. There's a ton of books. Michael J. Stackpole did a lot of the books. If you're a Star Wars fan, he also did the Rogue Squadron series. He also has his own RPG, Mercenary Spies and Private Eyes, that will one day be reviewed on this channel when I can get my hands on a print copy. But the fiction is very hard military science fiction compared to 40K, whose fiction can be very hit and miss. In my opinion, Battletech's and Mech Warrior fiction, unless you're reading the Dark Age book series, which came out in the 2000s because of their partnership with Microsoft, and that had a few issues with it, most of the quality of the writing is pretty good. The people who enjoy Battletech are the hard science fiction types that want, yes, a fantasy world with fantasy weapons, with battle mechs, but want that gritty, realistic style sci-fi, that when these are running around on screen, they have an established, predetermined logic that they will adhere to throughout it, and these are very hard military sci-fi novels. It does include a explanation of what's in here. Some of the artwork is old. This is from the old original 80s Mech Warrior line, which I believe this Battle Droid, which existed, was the first iteration of this game before Lucas sued them, came out mid-80s. Battletech, the original game, came out, I want to say, 88. These are, however, more modern drawings of these battle mechs. You can look on DeviantArt. A lot of the artists, Matt Plog and some others who contribute to Battletech, have accounts there and do very high-res versions of their art on DeviantArt that you can see. Licensed from Topps, though that's going to be changing soon. One writer I highly suggest that you look up is Blaine Pardue. He recently got fired from Games Workshop under some atrocious conditions, and it's been making me rethink about purchasing some things from Battletech, the Battletech line, after that debacle, that public debacle. More information can be gleaned online, but I'm definitely on his side, and I think his firing was extremely unfair. Now, this does include some cards. This is a new edition that the pilots do have, that for these various battle mechs, which are your main combat unit. This is, I believe, set to either the 5mm or 6mm scale. When you're thinking about sizing, the pilot, for instance, is sitting comfortably inside the head of these units for a size comparison. So these actually are pretty tall. And these in-game run 30, with some exceptions to rules, 30 to 100 tons. Though that has some interesting consequences nowadays with weight of some weapon systems that don't kind of make sense. The math for constructing these, which you can get in later books, is thankfully pretty simple. This is a catapult. This is a quick draw, I believe. These are the various pilots. Each of these have costs to hire the pilots for them and provide some minor alterations for the Battlemech. This is a more recent feature. This is the Alpha Strike cards. Now, reviewing the previous Quick Start version of Battletech, which like really trimmed the rules down, and I'm not sure, as I've been thinking about it more, how good a decision that is, considering the main goal of Battletech is its very tactical resource management combat system. Is, in my opinion, the big draw to the game. Alpha Strike was the original way they threw all that out the window and turn it more into a tabletop skirmish game where instead of having to roll hit locations and resource management to the same extent, you instead use this very simplified combat system. Now, the Alpha Strike box is something that I will be purchasing once I get that sweet YouTube money to do a review on that. But this is a radically different system that oversimplifies the combat to allow for a much faster skirmish style war game, and this is not going to have anywhere near as much depth as the main Battletech line. You do have your 2d6 because most actions in this game do require 2d6 to actually roll. This is a roll over system where you have the base gunnery and piloting attributes on your Battlemech, and then you have various pluses and minuses that are applied to that based upon environmental conditions. Whatever that target score is, then you have to try to roll, I believe, equal or over 2. It's been a while since I last played this, but if you want, there's also a really good online, it's not a VTT because it's a complete independent piece of software, Megamech, that allows you to connect directly to other players to play Battletech, and has a lot of the advanced combat rules that are available on it. The good news is, though, with these... actually, I don't know why I said 8. There is 8. I don't know. Why did I say 8? There's not 8. Yeah, look, wait a minute. 2 rows of 4. This is 8 Battlemechs. This does allow for 2 lances, so assuming that I'm assuming later in the rules, it'll have it stated specifically, the suggested unit cohesion, so that you have both sides equally balanced in it. This is your primer. Now, is that a rules primer, or... Yep, these are the various eras that take place. The video game I had showed you was during the clan invasion, the 3050, the 3061. There's other eras, the Succession Wars, which was sort of essentially, let's have Space Europe get involved in its internal squabbles. The Star League, the Civil War, the Jihad. This one had hit and miss. The fact that they effectively retconned a lot of that section by providing you the interstellar conspiracy options of like, hey, this is the official fiction we came up that you didn't like, but if you didn't like it, why don't you have all this conspiracy theory supplement stuff that, oh, if you didn't like it, you can explain it away because of Comstar and Word of Blake conspiracy theory garbage trying to manipulate the galactic governments from the shadows. Interesting consequences that wrought. The Dark Age, which actually was sort of a new golden age followed by the Dark Age, which is where the Mech Assault series from Xbox took place in, and they had also another miniatures game that was closer to HeroClix that they'd used through this period, and then the new Ilkhan era, where the clans, which is again sort of like Space Warsaw Pact, is now redoing their push towards conquering the galaxy. This is the map of the universe. Now, to give you a sense of scale, for instance, this House Davian, this is sort of like Space England, Space United States. There's 509 planets in the space, and each of them, for the most part, are separated by good 20 light years-ish, if you round it. And then you have Space Japan, Space Germany. I'm trying to remember what I tried saying House America and the Free Worlds League was. I know this is Space China, including just mass murder of everybody, every chance they get. Then you have the various periphery states. The basic history of the universe. Okay, yeah, here's the explanation of the various powers. The artwork can vary wildly depending upon what era. This is the 90s expanded experimental tech rules. This is the original, I believe it was the 3025 vehicle record sheets. Just because this series is so long. The rules, for the most part, the core mechanics haven't changed that much, but they've added so much on top of it over the years that, generally speaking, this is very backwards compatible with earlier iterations. It's just that they've put so much variation on top of it these days. The mercenaries faction. You do have the technical readouts, which allow you more descriptive mech options that you can do. The full rules are definitely the advanced setting. It used to be the core rules had the mech construction rules in them, so you could do your basic mechs. It used to be this was called level 1, which was your introductory box set. Level 2 was the tournament level stuff, and the core rulebook, the Total Warfare, had the tournament level rules, and then you had what were called level 3 products, which were all of the experimental stuff. So this is either because of complication or for fluff narrative play or for whatever reason just couldn't realistically balance it for tournament play, all was dumped into the level 3 category. Nowadays, they've reprinted the books, and in my opinion, the way they've spread out the rules between the books is almost as bad as Paradox Studios when you get games like Stellaris or their Victoria series or any Paradox massive sim, when that buy-in now is so expensive because everything is spread out among all that multiple DLCs. I think the Catalyst Games has adopted a very bad model for rules distribution in all of their rule books, that in order to get everything, and they didn't segregate the rules off that well, so to be able to buy everything really drives up the price. If you buy older editions, again, you miss out on some of the newer options, but I believe they had better distribution of rules across the material, so the buy-in wasn't as expensive. That's the downside to the current iteration of it. But as you can see, there's lots of books. Most of these are available in EPUB format as well. You can buy them for Kindle or directly off of Catalyst's website. Supposedly, one of these days they'll be doing audiobooks of these, supposedly Tex had been talked to, but that probably got hit the fan after the Blaine Pardue mess. I'm not sure I'd want to work with them after that travesty. These are your core rules, which I will look at shortly, but the nice thing about this design, ooh, this new very sleek CGI artwork, very well laid out in my opinion. This does have construction rules. Okay. This was not in the original WizKids quick start to my recollection. In the original WizKids, it was just here's the basic rules for everything that's included in here. You need to buy the core rule book to engage it. This actually has some basic understanding of the mech construction, though your weapon options are severely limited. Yeah, this isn't even a tenth of the full weapon system selection that you have nowadays in this game, but it does have basic construction rules, so that's actually a very nice addition. I used to love these when they had the weapon breakdown charts, when the fantasy artwork of how the weapon actually functioned. This looks like a Gauss cannon. Nope, this is a Denel particle projection cannon. Brief description of how the basic weapons work in here. Oh, some art. This is from Camo Specs online. You can go. These sculpts, some of them might be the older Iron Winds pewter Battlemech figures, which you could buy between $5 to $10 per figurine and paint them up. And nowadays they're moving towards plastic, and there's a very vibrant 3D printing community for this as well. These are your basic record sheets. These you're definitely going to need to copy. You're not going to want to mark on these directly because you're going to want to continuously reuse these record sheets. Yeah, this is what I was looking for the last time. These are your basic combat engagement stats. This is the armor. This is the internal structure, which when you breach armor and start going into the internal structure, then things are more deadly, because then you can be rolling and having more excessive damage to your battle mech, such as life support, which directly injures your pilot. You can have direct damage to the engine, which might make you go slower / end up increasing your heat value. This is your heat resources. Again, expanded rules, you could go up to like 60. This basic version and tournament level play will usually cap out at 30. In these rules, you have everything that you could need, including in this case a couple variations. You have in the expanded rules, you can see often mechs, depending upon what era, as technology / the rules changed, that there were multiple iterations of battle mechs for different combat roles. And so you might have the same frame but different equipment depending upon what iteration. And here's your build your own battle mech. I'm a little torn. I used to, when the original ones came out, had a laminator, and they were just single sheets, if I'm remembering correctly. And so just laminated each sheet so that as we were playing the game, then with just dry erase marker, just mark off for that game and then just wipe it all off, put it in storage, and then just pull out the laminated sheets again later when needed. I wish that these had been singles, because that would have been nice to laminate it, but being both sides, you don't want to negatively impact someone else's access to mechs either. I mean, you could always just cut this in half and then laminate it, but because of the both-sided printing, that could be a little bit difficult. Yeah, this is what I was looking for the last time. This is your cardboard standees. So the original WizKids was $50 back in the early 2000s. That didn't even have any plastic miniatures. It just had these cardboard stand-ins. Now, it did have a lot more cardboard stand-ins that you could use and a lot bigger variety of Battlemechs, but I'm glad that they dropped that and went mostly to the plastic miniatures so you can get an idea of the expanded capabilities of the game. Now, this is new to this version where it has these, what would you call them, overlays to the map that you could add in that provide a little bit of change to the combat system. This is your GM's quick reference guide, which pretty thick cardboard, actually. Yeah, this is no longer card stock. This is practically cardboard. This is some pretty thick stuff. This is going to be with you a while. Again, sort of torn. Like, there is a part of me that thanks them for investing in thicker cardstock to make this more sturdy, but the downside is there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to stick this through a laminator. But these are your basic combat reminders, double-sided, that you can get, and these are your combat sheets. Now, this has always been part of this game as far back as I can remember, these combat sheets. There's a lot of information on here. As you can see, there's elevation, so you have level 1, level 2, level 3. That impacts the ability, line of sight. So, instance, if you had a mech here and a mech over here, because of the level 1 and level 2 terrain, they wouldn't be able to see each other, and level 3 would also prevent some advanced indirect fire capabilities from being able to occur because of the height of this hill. So if you've ever seen like a military contour map, kind of the same idea, but simplified for this hex map system. And then you also then have negative levels, or depth now they call it, so that you can have mechs in the water. So for instance here, depth 1 would be sort of like waist deep on the Battlemech. Depth 2, it should be completely submerged. So if you had a mech here engaging a mech in the water, you'd only be able to see half of the Battlemech coming out of the water, which does also have negative implications on movement and such because of the depth. And then you'd put these two maps together, and then you would form an entire battle space with these. And then the cardboard standees that are available would impact the availability of provide at least a little basic variation on the map, so you're not fighting in the same environment all the time. I will be right back with a quick review of the rules to make sure that they haven't changed that much since I last played, which I don't think they have in the core rulebook, but in the quick start rules, but we'll see. And after I come back, I will give my review. All right, I have returned. So, after a quick look through the rules, this is Battletech like I remember it. The other one that I did, the quick start box, I think removed, in hindsight, way too much content from Battletech to the point that it effectively changed the game. Yes, it could be useful for introducing like a 10-year-old to the game system, but I think it's ultimately to the detriment because it removes so much of the game that they don't get a really good grasp of what's actually capable of occurring in this game. So this returns to the basic combat structure that I remember. There's the initiative phase, which in this game you want to actually win initiative so you can move second. The reason being a comparison to, again, 40K, as an example, in this game has alternating activation. And you want to move second because you want to be able to react to your opponent's moves. So you win initiative, your opponent has to move one of his mechs first, then you move one of yours, then he moves one of his, yours, theirs. Now, if you have unequal mechs, there is a little handy chart that helps you balance it out, how many mechs have to move to be able to even out the movement phase. But by moving second, it allows the initiative winning player to be able to react and position their mechs in better response to the other player's positionings. And so that's why in this game it's imperative to move second, unlike 40k where you move first. Another reason why this is important is because the weapon attack phase, unlike 40k where it's you move, you attack, you charge, you damage, you do everything for one player and then turn over to the other player and do everything, which in my opinion has some other negative consequences in that game. Battletech keeps the players engaged constantly because it's constantly hopping back and forth. And in the weapon attack phase, when you declare your attacks, it's not, oh, the other guy gets to fire all of his attacks and I gotta hope to survive to shoot all mine. No. Though you do alternating activations to see what order attacks are declared, again, wanting to go second so that you can decide what reaction you want to do to your opponent's engagements better. In this game, the damage resolution happens after all of the attacks are declared, rolled, and officiated on all of the mechs. So all the weapons fire occurs simultaneously, all the damage occurs simultaneously, so all mechs have, if they're close enough to shoot each other, generally speaking, will have an opportunity to exchange fire, which in my opinion is a much more superior system. Now, recently they've gotten more involved with physical attacks. I don't know, there always was sort of an ability to, like, cudgel your enemy's mechs in the older versions of the game. The Mech Warrior Battletech strategy game for the PC, I think, started really pushing like physical attack phases a lot more. There's various ways that you can kick, stomp, or include physical weapons like swords or hatchets or clubs to cudgel each other's mechs. To have a separate physical attack phase, I don't remember it being. I always remember that being in the weapons declarative attack phase. But according to this, now physical attacks is its own phase. Then you have the heat. This is again that resource management. Every time your mech moves, generates heat. So if you're running or sprinting or walking, that has different impacts on heat. The distance you travel, different impacts on heat. If you have laser weapons, those generate a heck of a lot of heat, but generally speaking have unlimited ammo, which in short games like this isn't going to be a big deal. But when you're playing campaign games, when you have your physical ammunition weapons, they generate less heat, so you can fire them more often. But with that ammunition you have to worry about, that could impact the availability of your mech to be able to use that weapon system later in the campaign if you can't find ammunition for it. Top that off with, then, depending upon what level of campaign you're doing, you might have harder repairs to do on the energy weapons, because energy weapon, much more fiddly electronics and focused, much more fine-grade electronics might also prohibit you from being able to use them later. I didn't see anything about salvage in my quick view of this game, but that is usually a big obstacle in longer campaigns, actually salvaging it, as you can tell with your movements, as well as facing requirements and hexes. Now, it isn't included in here, but you can also, for the most part, do this on the tabletop without hexes. The old rules for doing it was just double whatever the hex count was. So if it says that your mech can walk 3, run 5, just double those so it can walk 6, run 10. And again, doubling the weapon ranges. And you can do it on the table without having to use these hex maps. I used to have like some kid construction, what were they? The little blocks that young kids used to play with, where it's just basic geometric shapes like cylinders and squares and rectangles, and then you would build up a little city or terrain with those for the mechs to interact with. Now, some of these new acronyms they've come up with, like Gator, that is definitely new. Definitely gives me that feel of that hard military sci-fi of like, oh yeah, we have to make an acronym out of everything. Like, if you've seen some of the tortured acronyms they come up with in the military these days, I swear to God they come up with the acronym first and then have to justify it later. Like that brief bit from Agent Coulson when he's explaining how the acronym SHIELD came about. Yeah, that's real. They come up with the acronym first and then decide what all the letters stand for later. Layout is pretty nice with full color printing. It does look nice with all this digital CGI artwork in here. Again, it's going to be 2d6 rolling for most of these actions. The idea, you have the base combat ability of your pilot. For instance, you start off with gunnery skill 3, and then you would add, oh, the target is this far away. Well, that would be +2. Both the target and the firing mech ran, so that would be +4. So now you're at 10 to be able to engage. You roll your 2d6, and I hit a 10, so I actually luck out and shoot the opposing mech. That's the basis of the combat that's used in the system. Now, their hit zone location is slightly different from how it used to be. It used to be like a straight X, and so you would have kind of a front arc, side arc. This one, they've really lessened the impact of the left and the right arcs on it. Your physical combat modifiers. But again, most of the time it's going to be you're doing simple math, adding basic addition for intervening terrain. For instance, firing through woods might add 2, distance might add 3. As you take damage, you have the armor, which gets blown off, which then starts exposing components from inside the mech, depending upon then if that you hit exposed components, that can cause even more devastating impact by denying the enemy the ability to use his weapon, or you hit an ammo pocket causing an ammo explosion, which then could take out his arm in dramatic fashion. Now, these do use... I'm trying to remember. I think they were fission reactors, and so technically speaking, the catastrophic reactor explosions that are very popular in the video game shouldn't technically be able to happen, but I remember in the experimental tech book, they were just like, yeah, technically speaking, realistically, they shouldn't, but these were kind of in the 80s before anybody had like real big scientific background, and people like big explosions, so even though technically speaking it shouldn't be able to happen, just have the mech explode anyway, because mostly dudes playing it, they're gonna like seeing big mech go boom. And that was, if you watch the full version of the MechWarrior 3 intro to this video, you get to see an Atlas reactor go critical. Technically shouldn't happen, but still fun to watch. Man, they really went hog wild on their color matching. I do like this, though, because it does... Once you understand what each color means, the quick ability to then judge, oh, this is... Yeah, it's an 18. What does that matter? Well, I've now had to go through 2 shutdown phases that could negatively impact me. Now I've had to go through multiple weapon attack fire phases. Blue. For some reason I think blue should be weapon. Personal opinion. Blue should be weapon, because weapon impacts are the ability of the weapon to accurately hit. But ammunition, I think, should be red, because that's usually more deadly. Because you go through these ammunition phases, heat phases, you could have an ammunition explosion in these mechs. And those ain't good. And then depending upon what terrain you go over, that can have impacts on the piloting ability, so that your mech can remain standing, because you can fall down in these mechs. Something that you definitely don't want to do, which then turns you into a sitting duck. It does include a couple basic scenarios. These, I think these are unchanged from the original book. The final exam one, I believe, is the same scenario they used in the original WizKids. I can't confirm these two, but the scenario, it's a very basic scenario, so it gives you a little bit of story of why you're engaging in this mission, the attacker and defender sides. Though this, they clearly tell you which mechs that you're getting. They've pre-balanced it for you. And then your deployment regions, your victory conditions, as well as any special rules for this. Generally speaking, if your mech leaves the combat engagement zone, then it's over. Unlike, again, 40K, because the very limited die range with their combat system, this then has all kinds of impacts on environmental impacts in the scenario that they can include, such as like full attacking at night, where you have, it's more dangerous to move between spaces because you can't see because of it's nighttime. Strong gale, which provides negative impact on your weapon shooting ability, because that wind is going to be pushing rounds, as well as making it harder to pilot, which makes sense considering how tall you are. With these type of strong gales are going to be battering your Battlemech. It does have some basic construction rules, so you can get an understanding of how mechs are actually put together, which is nice. This rulebook, in my opinion, this is the starting point. That if you want to really see what Battletech is about, yeah. The previous review was based upon the review of what was in the box and its value proposition. Having thought about it some more, I would probably downgrade that other video to about a 13, because it does not provide a good, accurate representation of what Battletech the game is. This is Battletech. This is your level 1. This is your introductory rule, so you can get a feel for the universe to see if you want to go hog wild and buy the full thing. The disadvantage, though, is the price. At $60. Now, if you get it on Amazon, so you could probably get it for $50. Your local game store is probably not going to be able to give you that much of a discount. I'd like to give this a little bit higher, but because of that price point to get into the game, I do think that this is going to be an 18. It's a good primer for the universe, gives you a good look at what the full game entails. It doesn't cut out a ton of things that then they have to later teach you how to play. It gives you a good look at mech construction, so you know that mechs can be altered and modified. Now, you can go completely hog wild with later books. You can introduce vehicles, tanks, aircraft, dropships, jump ships, warships, and I'm talking about space warships. Depending upon what version, however, you can have surface fleet warships as well. The amount of amazing combat ability in this game is unparalleled in any other genre, in my opinion, because of the fine work they've done in just expanding the universe capabilities. The downside to that is using the Paradox software analogy. There's just so much content out there. It can probably scare away a newcomer from buying a Stellaris or buying, I'm thinking, is Crusader Kings Paradox? Because you have the base game, but to really play it with everyone else, you have to buy 27 DLC, because they've kept on iterating and expanding upon it. And it can be a little bit hard justifying that to someone else. The universe is better than 40K, in my opinion. It's much more consistent than 40K in terms of its quality of the writing from the writers. It doesn't have anywhere near as much fiction book-wise as 40K does, because Games Workshop was just throwing their money at the wall, which is why it had varying quality. This universe they took the time to hire good writers, and so fewer books, but much better quality in general. Again, look at Blaine Pardue's books if you have a chance. Throw him some love for the way he was negatively treated by Catalyst Game Labs. Yeah, if they could just get it a little bit cheaper, I could probably put this at a 19 as a starter box. It does run the risk, again, though, of getting someone fully into the hobby. This is a decent price point. I wish, though, maybe reduce the plastic just so that you could try to bring it down to like a 30 or 40. I know that's people want the mechs, but you really want to be able to get them into the game and get to see what it's capable of doing. And I think they need to lower the price on that, even if they have to toss out some mechs. The value proposition of what they sell mechs for in general, and this box isn't bad, but they do need to bring the price down on this to really make this a good starter box for it. Now, comparing against other equivalents that are non the Games Workshop, they're in this general price range, so it's not that extraordinary, but the advantage for the basic quick start box that I'd reviewed previously was the fact that it was $25. There needs to be a way that you can take out the plastic totally and then just have cardboard stand-ins as your basic introductory box, and then have this with the plastic miniatures, just because this is the version that you want somebody to learn on this quick start rules, to give them a really good feel for how Battletech plays before dumping all of the advanced combat books and rules on them. But if you want some good community support tools, there's... I'm trying to remember what the old 90s software was that they used back in the day. I still have my license for that. There's also Solaris Skunkworks, WERKS. That's a Java-based program that has all the modern rules for building your battle mechs. Great community support for that. There's Megamech, which has, I think, their own design studio now for battle mechs, to incorporate them directly into the Megamech software so that you can, in sort of a VTT manner, engage with each other. But unlike, again, Roll20 or the horrid D&D Beyond, this you install locally, a local client, and then you connect with other players directly. So you do have to know other people directly to be able to engage with it, but you have control over your software, and therefore, if you want to make modifications to it, that you can do too, because it's I believe it was spread open source. I don't remember if it was MIT. It might have been GNU, but there's a lot of support. There's a huge fan community for this. If you look at the Wayback Machine for the old Solaris7.com, there's the new Solaris7.com, which hasn't really gotten my interest that much yet, but it could be on their way to improving. Lots of fans. And up until recently, where Catalyst was started to get a little litigious, because after the Kickstarter and they realized just how much demand there was for Battletech, I think they were originally thinking like $50,000 maybe raised for this. Most recent Kickstarter that they did back in 2020... the Kickstarter was back in 2019. And they ended up raising like $3-4 million after total, and it shocked them just how much untapped demand there was for the Battletech game. So there is going to be a new Battletech Kickstarter, Battletech Mercenaries, coming out in March of this year. If you have the option, though, definitely recommend trying this. Again, I'm not sure what my future with Catalyst Game Labs is after their most recent debacle, but the game itself is good community. Look up Tex Talks Battletech if you want to know the lore. I think this is an 18. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you think I missed anything about this rulebook, think I'm wrong entirely, and you want to start a flame war in the comments why Malifaux or 40K is actually the superior war game, then by all means, have at it. You just feed the algorithm, baby. I'll see y'all next time with another review, and may all of your dies be 7 or 9s. Whatever. Adios.